Okay, let's talk about comparing the accept, identify, move curriculum to traditional classroom behavior management strategies. So, applied behavior analysis incorporates the psychology and the social validity to help shape, prompt, reinforce, and phase support to help individuals be successful in society and also decrease maladaptive behaviors. By doing this in the school setting, classroom management strategies consist of either changing the desk arrangement, limiting space or the tools the students use, token economy systems, and the good behavior game. Some common comprehensive behavior management programs include the positive behavior management or behavior support, which is a system that is founded by the principles of ABA, which also the inclusion movement and the individual's values to help improve the individual's life by altering the environment to reduce or promote the target behaviors that teachers are wanting. With this, the school-wide positive behavior support was then created to help the schools kind of guide the students to know what the expected behaviors are and the rules that the whole school is trying to target. By doing so, they use positive phrases of what the student is expected to do and what they need to do in order to meet those school-wide expectations. The four positive behavior support elements of the ABA include using data to make decisions, establishing social and academic objectives to meet outcomes, practicing empirical and applied-based interventions, supporting staff implement with resources, and then using systems to shape the student behavior. With that, under part of implementing that student-wide support is using response to intervention, which is RTI, which incorporates 3 tiers. That the first tier is overall the classroom management, and then the second tier is a little bit more of the behavioral support, which has an extra layer to help those students who may be struggling with the standard curriculum. And then the third tier is when it's very individualized, and that's when a functional behavioral assessment would be done to determine the function of the behavior, so that essentially a behavior intervention plan would be created based off the functions of the behavior to really help that student out in the school setting. Another program is zones of regulation that is commonly used, and it helps. There's 4 categories of how the emotions are split up into. There's a red, yellow, green, and blue. And within that, it's kind of a de-escalation. So if someone's in the red zone, they could be really frustrated, or they could be extremely happy and they're just super heightened with emotions. And the way to bring it down would be using techniques of using silly putty or calming activities, breathing activities to come back down, to self-regulate and become back in the green zone to be ready to learn. So a comprehensive system is the AIM curriculum, which is accept, commitment, which is based off the acceptance commitment therapy, and that is what it was used for this study. So the 4 purposes of the study was essentially to compare the difference between the classroom interventions of decreasing the disruptive behaviors occurring in an intervention classroom that was getting the AIM curriculum, and then a control classroom that was just receiving the traditional classroom intervention of seat arrangement or assignments, also mindfulness of being an effective learner and being more active learner, and then also a token system called Awesome Tickets. The second purpose was to evaluate the difference between the student psychological flexibility scores through the child psychological flexibility questionnaire, and that was before and after receiving the AIM intervention, and then also the same questionnaire was completed with the other classroom, the control classroom, to see if there was a difference between the flexibility of that intervention. And then fourth would be just to expand on new behavior management systems that can be used in the classroom to help teachers out in decreasing disruptive classroom behaviors and promoting that social and emotional development in the public school setting for our kiddos. The research questions, these are the statistical questions regarding with the between and within statistical t-test analysis that will be completed in the study that we'll talk about later. There were 53 children ranging from 11 to 12 in the 6th grade. The intervention classroom had a total of 51 males and 12 females. The control is 14 males and 13 females. Within each classroom, there was a subset, and that was the reason for that was those particular students were monitored for the change in disruptive behaviors simply just because of the history that they had with maladaptive behaviors of being off task or shouting out or talking when they're not supposed to be, or not completing tasks when needed. The other 13 children they were always engaged in the appropriate behavior, so essentially they were more of a neutral classroom, another control group for the disruptive behaviors. So the independent variables for the intervention classroom was the AIM curriculum, which included the modules, and these were the days that were completed, and the token economy system of earning points. So if they were on task if they had 0 disruption behaviors, then they earned 20 points off the bat. If they needed more, if they had 1 disruptive behavior, then they got 15, and then it kept on going. If they had 2, then they would have 10 points, and then if they engage in 3 disruptive behaviors, then it would be 5 points, and if they engage in 4 or more, then they would get 0 points for the day. For the control group, it included the token economy of the awesome tickets, and they were given every time that the student engaged in appropriate behavior of following, raising your hand, doing everything that they're supposed to be doing that the teachers already instructed them. The dependent was the frequency of disruptive behaviors for the 27 subgroups, and then the changes in the reports of all students. These were the types of statistical tests that were done, the first 3, and then also the ABA design for the intervention was to show the disruptive behaviors through over the time between both classrooms, whether the intervention was in place or not. So the inter-observer agreement, this shows that this was for the intervention classroom, and the IOA was about 79.2%, with the total being the black was the teacher and the researcher was the white data points. So overall, it's just saying that the average disruptive behaviors that occur in the classroom with the IOA component. The session 22 was a day that no data was, or there was reported 0 disruptions. So for control group, this included, you can see that the researcher recorded more disruptive behaviors compared to the teacher. Besides, for all of them, the teacher was above, the researcher was above the teacher for all of them. On session 23, this was when the teacher was absent, but the substitute was there, and this was the day that students didn't have to follow the seating arrangement that the teacher had in place already, so the peers went to their groups that they usually do, and they were pretty disruptive. So the researcher just took the data supporting that the seating arrangement is a very important component and an effective strategy to alter the children's behavior and in decreasing that disruptive behavior. So the results between the group t-test was that there was a statistical difference between the two groups of receiving the intervention. So the intervention classroom with AIM and the control classroom. That was the changes scores. So intervention had way higher change than the control group. For the within group of the intervention, the t-test was statistically significant, and which means that there was a difference between the pre and the post, and it was an improvement. For the within group of the control classroom, there was no significant difference in the pre-test and post-test. There wasn't that much of a difference between the scores. Another way of looking at it is through this first bar graph on the left, and this is the survey. One is the pre-test, and there was a midpoint, and then there was a post-test. So this shows you there was an increase over time as the students got more modules provided to them in learning more about the hexaflex and all that psychological flexibility. The ones on the right were each student 8 was not included because the post-test they did not take a post-test, so they were not included in this bar graph. But the pre-test was the first time they took it, and then the post-test is in black. Same thing for the control group. You can see that on this left bar graph that there isn't a difference there pretty much just stayed steady at the pre and post and actually decreased a little bit over time. And student 17 was not included because they did not do the post-test. With this one, the intervention, the baseline and AIM intervention in maintenance, you can see that there was a steady decrease in disruptive behaviors throughout for the whole classroom average between the phases. And then on the control group on the right, you can see that the baseline had didn't have the intervention until session 6. And then there was a decrease, and this shows that when there is a token economy in place, that the disruptive behaviors decrease. However, when it is removed, it doesn't continue. So it only is effective when the actual tokens are being rewarded, and there's no carryover into maintenance. Whereas in the AIM intervention, the overall disruptive behavior still is maintained and actually decreased more. So that shows you the effectiveness of that. If they're able to get this intervention, that disruptive behavior it will be maintained for a longer period of times after the intervention is terminated. Social validity, the students overall in the intervention classroom were satisfied with the AIM modules, and they felt comfortable answering the questions, and they enjoyed the lessons. Overall, for these students, they had a little bit difficulty understanding the questions, and they were neutral to satisfied. The biggest difference between these interventions was that the prizes were not functionally based. So in the other intervention classroom, they were able to get different activities, whether it be escape from homework or other components of functions of behavior, whereas in the control classroom, they were only based on tangible items more. The teacher in the intervention was very satisfied with the intervention overall. And for the control classroom, she felt that that sometimes the tokens helped and didn't help. Definitely felt that the overall seating arrangement was a big factor in changing the students' behavior. When the tickets were out, that the students were more actively trying to earn them. So limitations with the study was that the teachers overall weren't able to give that one-on-one time with the students when they needed it. They could have used a little bit more time to go in depth of each activity. And that's simply just because the classroom, they only see the students for 40 minutes, just because that's the nature of middle school. And also a limitation was that the students weren't informed of how many points that they earned every day. It was every other day, and it would be interesting to see if that changed. If every day they knew how many they already earned, and if they could earn, if that would contribute to them getting higher, more points, so less disruptive behaviors. Also, the awesome tickets were not provided the first week of the intervention phase from the teachers, so it's just big fidelity. But it did give that opportunity to see that there was still a decrease in behaviors when the teacher gave a change of seats. And by doing that, it shows that that component was very important to why there was a decrease in the behaviors. So future areas would be evaluate the results of the AIM intervention with the same population size during homeroom classroom or a resource classroom to allow that extra time, and also to see if there would be like how many of each core or process of the AIM component really needed to be used. So if it needed to have 2 diffusions or one module of each would be okay, or if they need like 3 of each Hexaflex component to really make a difference. Also replicating the study in different population age to evaluate the generalization. So just picking a younger group would be awesome to see if the effectiveness changed. So overall, the current class study provided evidence for traditional interventions do decrease the student disruptive behavior. However, the difference between that is that the students don't have that social and emotional learning component that is offered by AIM, and also the student or the teacher moving the students around was important, and it contributed to the factor of the disruptive behaviors. And also during that substitute teacher coming in and showing that classroom arrangement of where the students are located is very important. So it'd be interesting to see if it was really the seating arrangement or if it was more or less the token economy that played a bigger role. And just the AIM overall is an ACT-based exercise for typical education, can provide more well-being for that holistic approach. Extending on previous research was that the teenager there was one study that did the awareness and acceptance in the school year. However, it didn't actually score the students' behavior or the changes in their acceptance. Also, there was a study that evaluated the school climate with questionnaires, but did not actually have an intervention, whereas this AIM intervention would add to that study of that well-being and social emotional being increased by the school climate in being more positive. Teachers having a strong positive relationship with students exposed to that positive culture. Once again, that I'm saying that positive culture and that student relationship, by doing AIM, the teacher benefits and the student benefit from doing these activities, so that it allows them both to grow and be more flexible in the mind, and when there is a problem behavior going on. So if a child is a meltdown, the teacher and the student both would benefit from learning these Hexaflex components. Zones of regulation is popular in the school system, and it addresses that social emotional development. However, it doesn't, it just stops there a little bit. And with the AIM curriculum, it has that intervention and with that way of that token economy of really being able to tie this school-wide positive behavior support with a social emotional curriculum. So it extends past that, so the zones of regulation a little bit more. And that's it.